When I was 7 years old, I started hiding snacks under my pillow. I never really stopped hiding snacks. I mean, I'm a Taurus moon, so I'm always going to be munching anyways. But I remember when I was 6 years old, I was standing in my grandmother's bathroom, and there were a bunch of kids waiting for me to come down to the pool. It was my 6th birthday. We were having a big pool party, and I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I was wearing a 2-piece bathing suit. And I remember turning to the side and looking down at my stomach and thinking, I can't go down there. I was so ashamed of how I looked at 6. A year later, at 7, I started hiding snacks because my parents had enlisted me into a weight loss program. But since I was too young to go to their program, my parents had to go in and get the food for me and bring it home. So at 7, I was very, very aware that I was not like the other children. I was fat. And people made sure to let me know that I was fat. My friends, my family, but most of all, myself. That spun out into a lifelong cycle of really abusing myself. That every time I looked in the mirror, no matter what weight I've been at, because I've been at lots of different weights. I've been at 260 pounds, which is like 100 more pounds than I weigh right now. I've also weighed like 50 pounds less than I do right now when I was trying to be a raw foodist and I only ate fruit and I went on long juice fasts, and I've also been 260 pounds when I binged every single night on everything that I could find in the cabinet. You know, I would say that, especially being in the weight loss community like I was on YouTube years ago, this was like 10 years ago now, that I was on YouTube in the weight loss community, but I had a YouTube channel all about my weight loss journey, and I showed myself losing 100 pounds on that channel over like a 7-year span of time. And out of all the people that I met in that community, I found that a lot of us had the same sentiment. That food was more of an emotional thing for us. And it wasn't just about like, I want to look good. Losing weight was more about exiting the prison of the addiction of using food as a form of comfort. And for many of us, I'll speak for myself specifically, it started in early childhood. So I started hiding food at 7. And as I continued to age, it became really more challenging for me to even eat in front of other people. When I was about 12, I developed an eating disorder. And I remember so clearly looking at like Tumblr posts of anemia, like vision boards of girls with thigh gaps. And I was part of these like message boards, these forums where, you know, I was part of a group of girls where we would like egg each other on, and we would talk about how I've gone 3 days without eating, and everybody would clap. And there was kind of a weird, dark support system of helping other people continue on their path of not eating. That is a little bit later down the road, but I kind of want to backtrack down to when I was younger. Because everything starts when we're young, right? Especially if we receive love for certain things from our parents, from our peers, from authority figures, teachers, pastors, whoever, when we're young for a specific thing, whether we want to admit it or not, we will be searching for that validation until we begin to correct those thoughts as adults. Like, I was literally just reading Kyle Cease's book, I Hope I Screw This Up, which is an amazingly... It's the book is perfect for what I'm about to say. He talks about validation. He talks about just being honest and being free with who we are, right? That's a great book. That's one of my recommendations. We're always going to be searching for validation. And for me, one of the first things that I ever was searching for was to be loved because I wasn't loved for how I looked. I was taught from an early age that how I was not okay. There was something very wrong with me, that I was different from all the other children. I was fat. There was something wrong about me. And when you're a child, those first important years of your life, when you're developing your confidence, your sense of self, who you are, I found that as a child, I had a very hard time expressing myself to close friends even, because I felt so self-conscious of my body. I felt when I walked into a room, I was immediately rejected because of how I looked. It didn't matter if I was talented. It didn't matter if I had something to say. It didn't matter if I was charismatic. All that mattered in my head was that I was fat and that I was immediately disqualified from having any sort of love, validation, affection, accolades, because I was fat. And that started at a very, very early age. So I want to also talk about the fact that food, I'll speak for myself, for me has always been an addiction. It's been a very challenging thing for me to work with, where it's either I'm starving myself or I'm overdoing it, I'm binging. It's been a challenge for me to find kind of a happy medium. Now, back in 2021, I had gained a bunch of weight because of what I had been going through in my life. I had, like I mentioned previously, there was a period of time from like 2009 to like 2015, I would say, is when I lost 100 pounds. The first time I went from 260. Actually, I lost more than 100 pounds. I went from 260 down to 130 in that span of time. And I tried all sorts of things. I did all sorts of crazy stuff. Like I said, I played around with being a raw foodist, only eating raw foods, studied book after book after book, was part of that community. And I love those people, right? I love a hippie out in the field with their juicer. I love it. But for me, it wasn't for health. And I said it was for health online, and I showed myself juicing, and I smiled. But for me, it was an eating disorder, right? So during that span of time, I was speaking to a bunch of people. I was encouraging all these people in the weight loss community as kind of a quote-unquote public figure back in the day. Always just showing past pictures of myself. Here's a fat picture of me, and here's a picture of me now when I'm accepted. Because now I'm accepted because I'm not fat. But this is the thing that I found. 260 pounds, 130 pounds, it didn't matter. It was a self-worth issue. I will make a comment and say that when I walk into public at 260 pounds and when I walk into public places at, the weight that I am now, which is like 165, I am treated completely differently. I will say that. So it's not an illusion. Of course we all understand that, you're treated differently depending on how you look in society. So that's, it is what it is. And we can't really change society. But what I'm here to talk about today is that we can change ourselves. And I am not healed. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sitting here completely confident. I have many things inside of myself that still need to be healed. And I work on myself every single day. When I was in the shower this morning, I had Esther Hicks plan, right? Abraham Hicks, because I have to brainwash myself with confidence, self-respect, self-love, knowing that all of my thoughts become things, right? My point is that it didn't matter for me if I was 260 pounds or if I was 130 pounds. When I was running 6 miles a day, I was in the best shape of my life. I was juicing every single freaking day. It didn't matter whether I was 260 or if I was 130. I still felt like a piece of shit. I still felt like I had no self-worth. Why? Because when I was a child, it was demonstrated to me that there was something wrong with me that needed to be fixed. So it was the ingraining of that into the neural pathways of the brain time after time after time. And once that's implanted and we take that and then that becomes the inner voice, that becomes the inner critic, right? So it doesn't matter if, I was like some supermodel or something and all these people are like, you are gorgeous. It wouldn't matter because I became the critic, like the voice that was implanted in me when I was a child, and from all the bullying that I experienced as a kid, from like all the kids in the neighborhood, the kids on the bus, the kids at school, right? That was ingrained into my self-worth system. And I became the bully of my own self. That every time I looked in the mirror, I thought negative thoughts about myself. And that just re-ingrains that into the brain. The neural pathways of the mind are like a path. And if you just keep moving over that path again and again with negative thoughts, negative thoughts, negative thoughts, negative thoughts, negative thoughts, it becomes a pathway that is well established. So the only way to change that path, to change that system, is to change the literal brain. And I have been working on this for many years. But specifically over the past couple years, I have been making it a daily practice and a priority to reprogram my mind. And I know we throw that stuff around today a lot, right? That we need to think positive thoughts and, we got to be careful what we think because it will manifest into the world around us. I take the spiritual approach. I also take the scientific, psychological approach to this. People like Mel Robbins, I really respect. She talks a lot about training the brain, just as one example of many people that I look up to that speak about this. But I also respect people from the spiritual world, people like Eckhart Tolle, for example, that just comes to mind. I like his approach because he, to me, feels more like what God feels like. And that's a high praise for Eckhart. But to me, the way God feels is it feels very safe. It takes us outside of all of these societal norms. Like, dude, you can be It doesn't matter if you're fat. You could be a billionaire. You can get any fucking woman you want. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if you're fat. It's all made up. It's bullshit. This stuff is bullshit. So it's like, once we understand that and we start reprogramming the mind and understand, this is the way I see it. And I literally was listening to Esther Hicks saying this morning when I was in the shower brainwashing myself, right? She was talking about, Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks, was talking about standing at the periphery of reality, right? It as instead of being under the waves, and she didn't say it exactly like this, but this is the imagery that I feel. It's like you're under the waves, you're trying to keep your head above water of the quote unquote problem, which in this case, we're talking about being quote unquote fat, right? Like, oh wow, I'm fat, I have no self-worth. Okay, let's, instead of being in that quote unquote problem, let's kind of move off to the periphery and stand on the outside looking in. It's all bullshit. It's all an illusion, man. This is all made up, right? It's like, okay, you can literally just make up anything and it's reality. And I understand that there are certain societal standards, like, well, you know, you get more attention if you have six-pack abs. Like, I get that, but at the same time, like my example, if you weighed 350 pounds and you were a billionaire, like, people are not going to be caring about your abs. Like, it's all freaking relative. Like, things are, and even in that regard, that's bullshit too, because why do people only like you because you have money? Just fuck all this. This is all made up. This is all bullshit. And that's my point with this whole thing, because I have struggled my entire life with my self-worth. Why? Because of my appearance. And that's fucking stupid. I know I'm swearing a lot in this episode. I'm sorry, but I have a lot of anger about this because it's like like I said, this is my point. 260 pounds, 130 pounds in the best shape of my life. It didn't matter. It didn't cure me. It didn't fix me. It didn't take away the pain. I wasn't suddenly like, wow, I have amazing self-worth and I can do anything that I want to do. I can just believe what I want to do and I can do it. What happened, let's skip forward years and years, okay? There was a period of time, and it started at about 2018, I would say, when everything in my life shifted completely, right? I was in full-time Christian ministry. Everything changed in my life at that point. This was before my Christian deconstruction. I was having a very hard time adjusting at this period of time in my life. I gained a bunch of weight back, and I ended up being back at like 225 when I moved into this apartment in 2020 during the pandemic. And at that point, I felt like I couldn't even move around, and I actually couldn't even move around at one point because I had such a bad back injury, my sciatic nerve, I actually couldn't walk around for a straight year. And I was still making videos on my ministry YouTube channel and everything that whole time. And, you know, I was being fully supported through donations and things like that at that time, while I could not even move. Like, I could not walk from this room to the kitchen. I could not make it there. I could not walk. Like, I felt immobile. And that's what began my issue with, like, not being able to leave the house. It started back then. It hit my confidence to such a degree. I felt like I couldn't get around. I couldn't do anything. So the sciatic nerve injury, I mean, there was one point I was on the ground. It honestly triggers me even to talk about it. I'd get my clown nose, but that's okay. We don't need the clown nose this time. I was on the ground. I literally could not stand. I was sure I was going to be taken in an ambulance, and I live on a third floor apartment, so It would have been quite the feat to get me down there. But I was overweight. I literally couldn't walk around because of the back injury for a year straight. Finally, I rehabbed my back, right? And then my Christian deconstruction started in 2021. So my back got better, and then the Christian deconstruction was it was like a psychosis. It really was. Like what, and I'm still dealing with all of this, right? It's not like past tense. It's like I'm still working through a lot of this stuff. This is my point. This is why I'm talking about the 2021 period where I couldn't move. I was 225 pounds, because then what happened was, it was at the end of 2021, something happened where I could no longer eat. It was a strange phenomenon, which is called globus sensation, where it feels like you can't swallow, even though you can. And if you want to look it up, it's called globus sensation, and I don't wish it on anybody. And even talking about it, I get scared that it's going to come back. So knock on wood, everybody. Give me a little knock while you're watching this or listening to this. It was to the point where I could only eat soup for months and months and months. And back in 2021, like I had mentioned previously, years ago, I was a raw foodist. I was a vegetarian for 7 years, didn't eat any meat. And then I went back to meat years later, up until 2021. And then what happened in 2021 with that globus sensation thing where I couldn't swallow, I literally could not swallow. Like, it was one of the scariest things I have ever been through, and it felt like it was never going to go away. My whole throat was just this tight feeling. I think it was honestly just triggered from like PTSD, high levels of stress, everything going on with my Christian deconstruction. You know, I was losing my identity, didn't understand what was happening to me, when really it was actually a spiritual awakening. But during that time when I couldn't eat, all I could eat was soup, it was like something changed again in me where I didn't want to eat meat anymore, even when I could eat again. And so I became a pescatarian. So I only eat seafood now. And that's been, I've been a pescatarian now for over a year. My point in talking about that, though, is when I was 225 pounds during that globus sensation period where I couldn't eat anything but like liquids, basically, like I was drinking those like Ensure drinks and stuff. And I lost a bunch of weight because of that. And I had been trying to get weight off for years. When I weighed 225 pounds, I tried everything, but I just kept going back to the binging. Like, it was an emotional addiction for me. And that's why I love Kyle Cease's book, because he touches on those themes, and he talks about how he really struggled with food as well. So anyways, I lost a bunch of weight to the weight I am now, which is like, I don't know, I lost like 60 pounds or more over the past year. And it actually happened in kind of an unhealthy way. I'm going to be honest with you. It was that globus sensation experience, and then it was like, just, I couldn't eat because I was just going through such a grief period of, I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but just a lot going on in my life. And especially, which is what I will talk about publicly, is my Christian deconstruction, where I lost my identity. I lost who I was. And there have been times recently where I have felt like I've wanted to go back to food again recently. And as I have been doing this personal development with changing my brain, changing my mind, doing this shadow work, it's shown me that the food addiction, the going to food for comfort, it all ties together, is my point. The self-worth issues for me, the going to food for comfort. It was my first addiction as a child, was food, right? I wasn't being nurtured. I was constantly being criticized. I felt like I just had very low self-esteem from my first memories, and food was always my friend. I could always go to food, right? It was always there to comfort me. It was always there by my side. It was always there when I was crying and alone, right? And this time, and this is my point of this whole episode, this time I'm saying no to that. I want to grow past that this time. I don't want to go back to food. I don't want to gain 65 pounds back again. I want to stay at this weight, and I want to continue to improve my body and become healthier and become stronger so that I can do all the things that I want to do in this life. It's not about that I want to be hot, right? It's about I want to be in a healthy space where food is not connected to self-worth, where food is not connected to an addiction or a comfort. I have been daily training my brain to understand and unpack and realize that all of this stuff, it has to be unpacked. It has to be addressed. It has to be rewritten in the program because it started in early childhood. And as many diets as we go on, right? And as many things as we try, it's always just going to go back in that cycle of coming back to food as a comfort if we don't handle the root problem. And for many of us, like I said, being in the weight loss community for like 10 years, really, this, before I was a minister, I did that. And I met a bunch of people in that community, and many people all reported the same thing, that it was an emotional eating thing that started in childhood, and it's something that you can't just go on a diet to fix. Do you know what I'm saying? Because this is an emotional problem, and for many of us, it's linked to all of these other traumas where it's like, oh, I asked out Susie and she said no, because she wanted to go out with Brad because he had a six-pack and I didn't. It's like, okay, that's connected to self-worth. Or, I was bullied for many years by like literally everybody. So for literally people like bullied me badly for being fat. So, I was called all sorts of names. It was just, I think back on all of that and I'm like, this is all so stupid. This is stupid, everybody. This is stupid. Like, all of this is made up. And that's why I'm going back to that again. All this is made up. All that matters is that we retrain our brains. It doesn't matter what we weigh. It doesn't matter how much money we have. It doesn't matter how many accolades or whatever. It matters about our self-worth. I also want to make one more point, that a few years ago when I had gained all of that weight back and I weighed 225 pounds, I had been very involved in like TikTok and the online community of being fat positive, right? So I believe in that as well. Like it's not about one side or the other. Like, oh, we should just accept who we are and be fat positive, or no, it's unhealthy to be fat and we need to fit these societal standards. Personally, I think none of it's right and all of it's right, because it matters about you. Like, there was a period of time where when I was weighing 225 pounds, I was wearing these two-piece outfits, going out in public, purposely trying to get myself used to what it felt like to be confident in myself at the weight I was at. For the first time in my life, I finally was like, you know what? I weigh 225 pounds. I'm wearing a two-piece outfit. I'm out in public. I don't fucking care. I was in such a good place at that point. And so I want to stress that this is not about weight. The reason why I called this episode fat is because that was the word that was used against me for many, many years. And that's why I love the fat positive community, because it's like reclaiming the word queer, like we did in the LGBTQIA plus community. We reclaimed that word queer. It used to be a slur against people. I believe that now with shows like Shrill, freaking love that show. It's really like a gem if you haven't seen it. Shows like Shrill, like all of these different things happening with and people like Lizzo who are just coming out here looking fucking gorgeous and sexy and just like flaunting herself as who she is. Like, I am 100% for that. So I'm not coming out here to say like anything specific. I'm just talking about my struggle, where it started when I was a child. It started back then, where I was told that because I was fat, I wasn't worth anything, which is a effing lie. It is a lie. I don't care who said it to you. It is a lie. And so I just want to take a minute, no matter what you weigh, no matter what you want to be, whatever. Let's just take a minute and just realize together it's all made up. And there's nothing that could ever make you not worth something. It doesn't matter what you weigh. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how many achievements that you've achieved. You could sit and play freaking video games in your bedroom, eating Cheetos for the next 50 years, and your existence matters, right? And I'm not saying that we should just like give up, you know what I mean? And just be like, well, I guess nothing matters. I'm not talking about nihilism either. I'm talking about all of this is made up. That is always going to be my point. All of this is made up. Society has made it up. They're all human constructs. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that we are divine beings of light with all these labels and human ideas and all this shit. None of it is going to matter. It doesn't matter now. And that's why I want to be an advocate for let's just be in the now. Let's be higher beings now. In this world, in these human suits, right? We don't have to wait until whatever, right? To experience the bliss that is now. Right? It's like it's like I talked about with the Esther Abraham Hicks, where she talked about being on the periphery of reality, standing on the outside, looking in. That's why I call myself the metamystic, because I want to be it's beyond mysticism. It's beyond ourselves. It's like the way that I see things is I'm sitting here right now talking to this camera. But really, the real me, the higher me, is like standing by my side looking at me, observing me with her hand on my shoulder. And I'm like channeling through that higher version of me to you, right? It's kind of like standing on the periphery of your own self. And I'm not trying to be like too metaphysical. I'm just saying it's like when we start to deconstruct these lies that we have been told, like, oh, you're fat, so you don't deserve love, or you're fat, so you're a piece of shit, basically. It's like, first of all, who the hell are you? Right? You meaning anyone who's ever said anything like that to you. Are they billionaires? Do they have six-pack abs? You know, before you go listening to people, make sure that they have the goods. You know what I'm saying? Number one. Number two, who the hell are they anyway? Number three, it's all fucking made up. So, do they have the goods? Step one. Step two, fuck them. And step three, this is Missy's 3 steps to life. If you're taking advice from somebody, first make sure that they're like a successful billionaire with an 8-pack abs, number one, okay? That have like awards where they actually could, it's like you actually can listen to them because they actually have something to say. And if that's not the case, let's go to step 2. Even if they are a billionaire, they might just be an asshole. I always love this quote. It's like, before you diagnose yourself with anxiety or depression, first make sure you're not just surrounded by assholes. That's a great quote. Oh yeah, so step 1, make sure they have the goods. Step 2, even if they do have the goods to back up the criticism that they're saying to you, doesn't matter anyway, right? Who the hell are they? Because they're not like the divine order of the universe. And then number 3, it all goes back to it's all made up anyway. So that's where I'm at, y'all. But to make this more practical instead of so like out there and metaphysical and like we're in the now, and I do believe in all of that, by the way. I believe in both. I believe in the spiritual side, and then I believe at kind of looking at it from the other angle as well, which is more the psychological side, where I like to kind of hang out there too, where it's like we can literally change the neural pathways of the mind, and we have to. I'm a believer of that. I don't think it's magically just going to go away, right? Because every single time we start falling into those negative thought patterns and we do come into the now and realize that's all bullshit and it's all made up, that act in and of itself of the, okay, let's remove ourselves from this and let's be in the now, the act of that is literally what psychology is saying when it's talking about changing the neural pathways of the mind. We're just using different language from different angles. We all have our hand on the same elephant, right? We're just standing on a different side of the same elephant. So from the spiritual perspective, it's about being in the now. From the psychological perspective, it's about retraining the mind and the program. We're all saying the same thing. We're all doing the same thing. And I feel like if we don't do those things, we are just going to live in a perpetual cycle of being on autopilot, of staying in the same situation again and again and again, and continuing to live in these cycles that we are desperately trying to get out of and just keep beating ourselves up, beating ourselves up, beating ourselves up. Why can't I lose weight? Why can't I, find a partner? Why can't I make more money? Why can't I achieve these things I want to achieve? It's because we're not doing the work. Period. That's it. It's as simple as it is. It's not for special people. It's not for talented people. It's for anybody, anywhere, at any time, in any socioeconomic place that they're in any appearance that they're in. It doesn't matter. It's just about doing the work, and anybody can do it. Anybody can be a billionaire. Anybody can be an achiever, right? Anybody can be an inspiration. In conclusion, it's all made up, first of all, right? So we can just release all of that garbage, all those lies that were spoken over us from childhood, from society. It's all made up anyway. Let's have some relief for a minute here, right? None of that matters. Take a sip of coffee, okay? Everything's made up. We made it all up. Okay, that's step 1, realizing that. So it's that release of those toxic. It's like the body's tight. Like my back hurts, my freaking jaw hurts, man. Everything in my body's tight. And so what I do is I'm just like, Missy, just stop right now in this moment and realize this is all made up. Everything's made up. And I'm not saying that, there aren't things that matter, like love and kindness and, standing for the underdog and all of these things. I'm not saying that, like, truth doesn't prevail. I'm just talking about really more of the toxic side of all of this is if we can look, it's like the shadow side of the truth. It's not about trying to convince ourselves that we have worth. That's not going to work because I have tried to do that. I've tried to convince myself like a lawyer, trying to get it into my brain. Missy, this is why you have worth. This is why you matter. This is why. It never worked. It always fell flat. And I never understood why that was. And it's because I needed to do a combination of things. You can't just drill this crap into your head. You have to work on the digging up of the old. And it's a constant, it's a combination of it's the digging of the old, realizing that we've been hurt since we were kids, right? Where all these times that, we were rejected or made fun of, or we were embarrassed or whatever, right? It's like going through all of those times. And actually, this is IFS parts work. This is hypnotherapy stuff. This is going back to the actual event of it happening. If I transport myself back to an event of when I was being bullied for being fat, right? There was one particular event where this guy, he was way stronger than me, and he held me in a chokehold, literally. I couldn't breathe. I was very scared. And then there was a group of guys around me, and they were all laughing. They were all making fun of me. And I was literally it felt like I was blacking out, right? They were all making fun of me. And it made me feel like I literally had no value and no worth. And I was being mocked. So this is my example. It's going back to that memory and changing the way it happened, in your mind. Now that you're a more evolved being, and now that you have gone through so many things in life, I'm not the person I was at that point in time. If that happened to me now, I would have reacted differently. So it's a matter of going back to that memory and reframing it. Changing the details of the scenario. Even if it's the self that you are now, going back to that and kicking that guy's ass, for example. I don't condone violence. I'm just saying it's going back to that event and kind of reframing it from the more evolved perspective that you are now at. It's it wouldn't have been as painful if we were able to process it at that time. I couldn't process that event. All I felt was I was worthless because of that. Where now, as a 31-year-old woman, I think back on that and I'm what the hell was that? It's it's reframing it. It's imagining it different. And it's also the combination of daily putting into our minds these new thoughts and constantly bringing ourselves back to the now, which is the spiritual combined. For me, it's the spiritual and the psychological combined that has made a really good plan for me to start. Not to start. I mean, I've been working on this self-worth for years, but there are these combinations of modalities where, for me, just the spiritual, it didn't hold enough grit to it. It was I needed both. I needed to get in there with my claws and dissect the actual traumas that happened. And that's where kind of the psychological side comes in for me. And it's they're both working together in a marriage. They're holding hands. And the two of those things, through meditation, through being in the now, as well as working through the actual traumas through parts work, IFS, all of these things combined, I find, hit things from different perspectives. And the more sides that we can hit this at, the more it's going to change our literal DNA. Okay, so I think I've said what I've said today. Once again, I am not claiming that, it's better to be fat or it's better to not be fat. It's all made up. That's my point. It's all made up. And as long as everybody just does what is best for them and doesn't listen to anybody else and is just doing what is best for them, if I was 225 right now, like I was before, I was claiming that. And I was taking advantage of it. I'm I can't lose weight. I've tried everything to lose weight, so screw it. I am just going to claim, I am just going to be who I am now and embrace who I am. I am beautiful as I am right now. And that work that I started doing back in 2021, it changed me. So I believe in that. I also believe in, if you want to go on a 14-day juice fast, do it. You know what I'm saying? It's not either or. It's both and beyond, right? So it's been Missy Gordon, the Metamystic here, everybody. I love you, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care. If this show has impacted you in any way and you would like to support the show, you can do so through a link in the description and donate to the Metamystic Show. Thank you, and I will see you next time. Take care.